My parents handed my sister a $13,000 luxury cruise package and tossed me a $2 scratch-off ticket while laughing that maybe I would finally get lucky. Well, they were right. I won $100 million. But the real twist was not the money. It was finding out who actually paid for that cruise just seconds before I scratched that ticket. Before I tell you how I walked out of that house with a fortune in my pocket and left them with nothing but their own greed, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the black sheep who ended up owning the whole farm. My name is Julia, and at 32 years old I build city parks for a living, but my family treats me like the hired help. The biting Chicago wind whipped against my face as I navigated my muddy Subaru Forester down the street of my childhood home. It had been a grueling day at the construction site, managing contractors and hauling soil samples, and I was already dreading this Thanksgiving dinner. I just wanted to park, get through the meal, and go home to my quiet apartment. Just as I turned the wheel to pull into the driveway, a blinding white light cut me off aggressively. A brand new Range Rover swerved directly in front of me, taking the last available spot near the heated garage entrance. I slammed on my brakes, skidding slightly on the fresh ice. My brother-in-law Spencer stepped out of the driver's seat, wearing a coat that likely cost more than my first car. He smirked, tapping his expensive watch as he looked at my vehicle. "Move that dirt pile down the street, Julia," he shouted over the howling wind. "I do not want mud splashing on my rims. This is a rental and I need it pristine for the client meeting tomorrow." My sister Dominique stepped out from the passenger side looking like she'd just walked off a runway in Milan. She pulled out her phone immediately, the ring light case already glowing. "Hey guys, we are finally here. Look at my sister is car versus ours. Levels, people. Levels." She laughed, zooming in on the mud splattered on my door before blowing a kiss to her camera. I reversed and parked 2 blocks away, trudging back through the snow with my head down. My boots were heavy and my fingers were numb by the time I reached the front door. Inside the house smelled of rosemary roasted turkey and expensive perfume. My mother Estelle was arranging flowers in the foyer. When she saw Dominique, she shrieked with joy, dropping the roses to embrace her. "My beautiful girl, you are glowing." But when she turned to me, her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of critical assessment. "Julia, look at your boots. You are tracking slush on my Persian rug. Take them off outside on the porch." I stepped back out into the freezing cold to remove my boots, leaving me in my socks. When I came back in, I handed her a bottle of Pinot Noir I had picked out carefully. It was $25, which was a lot for me that week given my tight budget. She looked at the label like it was poison. "Oh. We will just put this in the kitchen for cooking sauce. Your father opened the $300 Cabernet already. Go wash up in the guest bathroom. You look like you have been digging ditches all day." "I am a landscape architect, Mom," I whispered, but she had already turned her back to fawn over Spencer. Dinner was an hour of torture. Spencer bragged about his crypto investments, which I suspected were failing, while Dominique talked endlessly about her follower count and brand deals. I sat there in silence, eating dry turkey and trying to be invisible. No one asked about the city park project I had just won a bid for. No one asked if I was seeing anyone. I was just a prop in their perfect family tableau. Then came the moment my parents had been building up to all night. My father Bernard stood up, tapping his crystal glass with a silver fork. "We have had a great year thanks to Spencer's financial advice," he lied smoothly. "So we have a surprise for our favorite couple." He handed them a thick gold envelope. Dominique tore it open and screamed so loud the crystal glasses shook. A 14-day Royal Caribbean cruise on the Icon of the Seas. The Sweet Life package with a private balcony. Total value $13,500. Dominique and Spencer jumped up, hugging my parents while my mother wiped away a tear. "You two deserve it for working so hard on your image," my mother said. Then my father looked at me. His expression hardened. He tossed a thin paper envelope across the table. It slid across the mahogany surface and hit my water glass with a pathetic sound. "We spent the entire gift budget on the cruise, but we got you something too. Maybe you can scratch your way to a better life since that engineering degree is not paying off." It was a generic Thanksgiving card with a $2 Lucky Gold scratch-off ticket inside. Spencer laughed so hard he choked on his wine. That is classic. Scratch it now, Julia. Maybe you will win $5 for a car wash. The table erupted in laughter. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I said nothing. I just pocketed the ticket, forcing a smile. Thank you, I said softly. Before I could sit back down, my mother pointed to the kitchen. The maid is off today for the holiday, Julia. Be a dear and handle the dishes. The others need to look at the cruise itinerary. So while they toasted with expensive wine in the living room, I stood over a sink full of dirty grease and turkey bones. I scrubbed the plates, feeling the hot water burn my hands, trying not to cry. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I dried my hands to check it, expecting a work email. It was a text from my bank. Fraud alert. A transaction of $13,500 was just authorized for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. If this was not you, please reply immediately. My blood ran cold. My mother had my emergency credit card information from when I helped her set up her iPad for online shopping last year. She did not just give them a cruise, she made me pay for it. They were celebrating a gift that they stole from me. I dropped the phone on the counter. The rage was so intense my hands shook violently. I was about to march out there and scream until the windows shattered. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to tear that gold envelope to shreds. I reached into my pocket and felt the crinkled edges of that $2 ticket. I grabbed a quarter from the counter. I do not know why I did it. Maybe I needed to destroy something. I scratched the first number violently. 15. I scratched the second. 15. My heart skipped a beat. I scratched the third. 15. I froze. I flipped the card over to read the prize legend for the triple 15 combination. The letters were small but clear. Jackpot. $100 million. I stared at the dirty dishwater swirling down the drain. 100 million. And they just stole 13,000 from me. I looked at the ticket, then at the living room where they were laughing at my expense. I carefully folded the ticket and put it in my inside pocket next to my heart. I did not scream. I did not cry. I picked up my coat and walked past them towards the door. Where are you going? My mother asked without looking up from the cruise brochure. Taking out the trash, I whispered. I walked out into the snow, got in my muddy Subaru, and drove away. They thought they had broken me. They had no idea they just handed me the power to buy and sell their entire world. 3 days had passed since I walked out of my parents' house into the snow. 3 days of silence. 3 days of carrying a piece of paper in my pocket that weighed more than the entire city of Chicago. I had not gone back to my apartment immediately. Instead, I checked into a nondescript hotel downtown using cash. I needed time to think, and more importantly, I needed legal protection before the sharks smelled blood. I sat across from James Sterling, a financial attorney who had been recommended by the only friend I trusted. His office was quiet, smelling of old leather and expensive coffee. He looked at the crumpled scratch-off ticket, then back at me. His eyes were wide behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "You understand what this means, Julia?" he asked softly. "This is a dynasty, changing amount of money. We need to set up a blind trust immediately. You cannot claim this under your own name if you want any peace." I signed the papers, creating the Phoenix Trust. A fitting name, I thought. I was rising from the ashes of the person my family had burned down. As I put the pen down, my phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. It was a notification from my bank app. Transaction declined. Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. Attempted amount $13,500. I smiled. The game had begun. At that exact moment, 30 miles away, at O'Hare International Airport, my family was learning the hard way that actions have consequences. I was not there, but the voicemails that started flooding my phone painted a vivid picture. My sister Dominique and her husband Spencer were standing at the check-in counter, surrounded by Louis Vuitton luggage that probably cost more than my car. They were dressed for the tropics in November, shivering slightly as the automatic doors let in the freezing wind. Dominique handed the agent the credit card with a haughty flip of her wrist. I can imagine the look on her face, the smug expectation of VIP treatment. But the agent did not smile. She frowned at her screen, typed something, and then looked up with that polite professional coldness that airline employees have mastered. I am sorry, ma'am. This card has been declined. The issuer has flagged it for theft and fraudulent activity. Dominique laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. Do not be ridiculous. Try it again. It is a platinum card. My sister pays for everything. The agent tried again. Denied. Please step aside, ma'am. We have a long line. If you cannot provide another form of payment, I will have to call security. That was when the first call came through to my phone. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from Spencer. Pick up the phone, you miserable witch. You cut the card. How dare you embarrass us like this? Mom is crying. Fix this now. I sat in the lawyer office sipping water, watching the notifications stack up. They were stranded. They had no other way to pay. Spencer was broke despite his flashiness, and my parents had leveraged everything they owned, including their house, which I would soon find out about, to fund their lifestyle. They were stuck in Chicago with no cruise, no money, and a lot of anger. But then the tone shifted. It happened around 2 in the afternoon. My family was likely sitting in the airport waiting area, surrounded by their useless luggage, too stubborn to leave and too broke to fly. Above them, on one of those large monitors that play 24-hour news, a breaking alert flashed across the screen. I can see it perfectly. My mother Estelle, dabbing her fake tears, would have looked up. The banner read, Illinois Lottery Jackpot Claimed. Ticket sold in Oak Park. The news anchor voice would have cut through the noise of the terminal. We have received confirmation that the single winning ticket for the $100 million Thanksgiving jackpot was purchased at the Shell station on Oak Park Avenue at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. The winner has not yet come forward, but check your pockets, folks. That $2 investment is worth a fortune. The Shell station on Oak Park Avenue. 6 p.m. Thanksgiving Day. My mother would have frozen. She knew exactly when she stopped for gas. She knew exactly what she bought. She knew exactly who she threw that ticket at as a cruel joke. The realization must have hit them like a freight train. They did not just give me a ticket. They gave me the keys to the kingdom. My phone, which had been buzzing with angry insults, suddenly went silent for a full minute. It was the silence of calculation, the silence of greed recalibrating its strategy. Then the vibration started again, but this time it was different. I looked at the screen. 79 missed calls. I played the first voicemail from the new batch. It was my mother. Her voice was unrecognizable from the woman who had screamed at me 3 days ago. Julia, darling. Oh my God, we are so worried about you. We are at the airport, and we just saw the news. Please tell me you still have that little card we gave you. You know we were just joking, right? It was a prank. We love you so much. Call Mommy back. We need to protect you. Delete. Next voicemail. My father. Son, listen to me. You are confused. That ticket was a group gift. It is family property. Do not do anything stupid like signing it yourself. We need to handle this as a unit. I am coming to find you. We are a team, Julia. Delete. Next voicemail. Dominique. She was crying, but not the fake tears she used for her followers. These were tears of desperation. Julia, I am sorry I made fun of your boots. I was just stressed. Look, Spencer is in trouble with some loan sharks. We really need this. You are going to be an aunt soon. I think I am pregnant. Do not leave your family behind. Lies, all of it. They did not care about me. They cared about the $100 million that I had legally secured 10 minutes ago. I thanked my lawyer and left his office. I drove back to my small rented apartment on the north side. I needed to pack. I knew I could not stay there anymore. I was naive to think I had time. I was throwing clothes into a duffel bag when the buzzing of my phone stopped. The silence was heavy in the apartment. I walked to the window and peered through the blinds. Down on the street, double parked and blocking traffic, was the white Range Rover. It looked menacing under the streetlights. They had found me. Of course they had. My lease was the only thing in my name that my father had co-signed years ago before I had credit. He knew the address. I heard the heavy footsteps on the stairs. My apartment was on the second floor, and the old wooden steps creaked under the weight of people running. They were not coming to congratulate me. They were coming to claim what they believed was theirs. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at the door. I had engaged the deadbolt, but against three desperate people, it felt like a piece of cardboard. Bam! 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 The fists hit the door so hard, the frame shook. Julia. It was Spencer's voice. It was not the smooth, arrogant tone he used when he was bragging about money. It was a guttural, animalistic roar. Open this door right now. We know you are in there. We saw your car. Open up, my father yelled, his voice cracking. Do not make us break this down, Julia. We just want to talk. I backed away into the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the block, not knowing what I would do with it. I know you have the ticket, Spencer screamed, kicking the door. You stole that from us. That is our money, Julia. Open the damn door. The wood splintered slightly near the lock. They were not going to stop. I looked at the fire escape window. I had 79 missed calls, and now I was about to have 3 intruders. My family had come to collect, and they were not leaving without a fight. I lowered the kitchen knife and took a deep breath before unlocking the deadbolt. The wood was still vibrating from Spencer's pounding, but the moment the latch clicked open, the aggression on the other side vanished instantly. It was terrifying how quickly they could switch masks. My mother Estelle did not barge in with rage. Instead, she collapsed onto me with a sob, throwing her arms around my neck. Her expensive cashmere coat smelled of cold air and the overly sweet floral perfume she had worn my entire life. Oh, Julia, thank God you are safe. We were so worried when you stopped answering. She squeezed me tight, too tight. It was a performance worthy of Broadway. Behind her, my father Bernard walked in, carrying a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon like a peace offering. Spencer and Dominique followed, closing the door and shutting out the freezing Chicago night. They looked around my small rented apartment with thinly veiled judgment, but for once they did not make a comment about the second-hand furniture. They needed something from me, and that made them dangerous. I stood there stiff as a board until my mother released me. She cupped my face with her manicured hands, looking into my eyes with a desperation that almost looked like love. Look at you. You look exhausted, darling. We came straight from the airport. We did not even go home. We just wanted to be together as a family to celebrate. Celebrate what I asked, my voice flat. My father popped the cork on the champagne. The sound echoed in the small living room. Celebrate our good fortune, of course, he boomed, pouring the foaming liquid into the water glasses I had on the counter, because I did not own crystal flutes. Sit down, everyone. We need to talk strategy. He sat at the head of my small dining table like he was presiding over a board meeting. Spencer and Dominique pulled up chairs, their eyes feverish with greed. My mother guided me to a seat, patting my hand. Listen, Julia, my father started swirling his glass. We know things got heated at Thanksgiving. We were all stressed, but that is in the past. The important thing is that we struck gold. Literally. Now I have already spoken to our family accountant, and we need to structure this correctly to minimize the tax burden. I stared at him. Our family accountant. Structure this. He was talking as if the money was already in his bank account. Wait, I interrupted. What do you mean, we? My father smiled, that condescending smile he used when explaining simple concepts to me. Well, obviously the ticket was a gift from your mother and me. We bought it with family funds. Technically, it is a return on an investment made by the household. You were just the proxy who scratched it. Legally and morally, that makes this a family asset. But do not worry. We are going to be fair. Very fair. Spencer pulled a folded piece of paper out of his jacket pocket. He smoothed it out on the table. It was a handwritten list. He called it the Family Capital Allocation Plan. Here is the breakdown, Julia, Spencer said, pointing at the figures with a trembling finger. Since mom and dad provided the seed capital, they get 50% off the top. That is 50 million. Fair is fair, right? Then Dominique and I need 30 million. We have been looking at commercial real estate for her fashion line. She wants to open a flagship store on the Magnificent Mile and maybe a location in Milan. And I have a crypto mining opportunity that requires heavy upfront liquidity. That leaves 20 million for you. Which is huge, Julia. You could buy a nice house. Quit your job. Maybe travel. Dominique chimed in, leaning forward. And Julia, think about the baby. I am going to need nannies and private security. You want your niece or nephew to be safe, do not you? You do not want to be the reason this baby does not have the best start in life. I looked at the paper. They had divvied up my winnings down to the last dollar before they even walked through my door. They sat there sipping champagne in my drafting room, planning how to spend 90% of the money while leaving me with the scraps. It was not just greedy, it was delusional. I looked at my mother. She was nodding along encouragingly. See, darling, everyone wins. Your father worked very hard on these numbers. The silence in the room stretched thin. I could hear the wind howling outside. I looked at each of them. My father, the failure who lost everything. Spencer, the gambler. Dominique, the liar. And my mother, the enabler. I started to laugh. It started low in my throat and bubbled up until I was shaking with it. It was not a happy laugh. It was the sound of a bridge burning. You guys are unbelievable, I said, standing up. My father's frown hardened. What is so funny, Julia? You think I am stupid? I said, my voice rising. You think I am the same doormat, Julia, who cleans your dishes and pays for your mistakes. You did not buy that ticket as an investment, Dad. You threw it at me because you thought it was trash. You mocked me. You laughed at me. You said, and I quote, maybe you can scratch your way to a better life. Well, I did. I leaned over the table, placing my hands flat on the wood. And as for family funds, let us talk about that. Let us talk about the $13,500 Mom stole from my credit card to pay for that cruise. The room went deadly silent. My mother's face drained of color. I know about the charge, Mom. I saw the alert. That was not family funds. That was grand larceny. And frankly, if we are talking about what is fair, I think the price of that ticket was paid for by the money you stole from me. So technically, I bought it myself. Spencer stood up, knocking his chair over. Listen here, you selfish little. No, you listen, I snapped, cutting him off. I have already claimed the ticket through a blind trust. The money is legally mine. Mine alone. And I am not giving you 50 million. I am not giving you 30 million. I am not giving you a single dime until you pay me back every cent you stole for that cruise. My father stood up, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. You ungrateful child, after everything we did for you, we put a roof over your head, we raised you. This is how you repay us. By hoarding wealth while your family suffers. You are not suffering, I yelled back. You are just broke because you live like kings on credit you do not have. That was the moment the mask fell completely. My mother, who had been playing the peacemaker, stood up. Her eyes were not loving anymore. They were cold, hard flint. She walked around the table. I thought she was going to cry again. Instead, she swung her arm back and slapped me across the face with all her strength. The sound cracked like a whip in the small apartment. My head snapped to the side. My cheek burned like fire. I tasted blood where my tooth had cut my lip. I touched my face slowly, turning back to look at her. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. You ungrateful brat, she hissed, spitting the words at me. You are nothing without us. You think you can just walk away with our money. I will destroy you. I looked at my father. He did not look shocked. He looked in agreement. Dominique was smirking slightly, the same way she did when I was humiliated at Thanksgiving. Get out, I whispered. My mother grabbed her purse. Oh, we are going. But do not think this is over. If you do not transfer that money by tomorrow morning, I will call every lawyer in Chicago. I will sue you for elder abuse. I will sue you for emotional distress. I will tell the world you stole that ticket from my purse. She stepped close to me, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You have no idea what we are capable of, Julia. You are going to wish you never scratched that ticket. She turned on her heel and marched out. My father followed, grabbing the champagne bottle he had brought. Spencer and Dominique gave me one last look of pure hatred before slamming the door behind them. I stood alone in the silence, my cheek throbbing. I locked the deadbolt. Then I slid down to the floor and cried. Not because I was scared, but because I finally realized that my family was dead to me. And if they wanted a war, I was going to give them one. I wiped the blood from my lip and reached for my phone to call my lawyer. The war had just begun. The Illinois Lottery Commission building stood tall and imposing against the gray Chicago sky. I walked through the revolving doors with my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. In my inside pocket, the signed ticket was warm against my chest. This was supposed to be the moment my life changed. This was supposed to be the finish line. I had spent the last 24 hours hiding in a cheap motel, afraid that my family might try to physically take the ticket from me. Now, surrounded by security guards and marble floors, I finally felt safe enough to breathe. I sat across from a kind older woman named Mrs. Higgins. She smiled warmly as she verified my identification and scanned the ticket. The machine beeped a cheerful sound that echoed in the quiet office. Mrs. Higgins clasped her hands together. Congratulations, Julia. Everything looks perfect. We just need to process the final validation and get the wire transfer set up for the Phoenix Trust. You are officially our newest jackpot winner. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 3 days. Tears pricked my eyes. It was over. I was free. I could pay off my student loans. I could buy a house where no one could ever scream at me again. I could disappear. But then Mrs. Higgins' computer screen flashed red. Her smile faltered. She frowned, tapping on her keyboard. That is strange, she muttered. She tried again. The red light flashed again, harsher this time. Mrs. Higgins looked up at me, and the warmth was gone from her eyes, replaced by a look of professional pity. Julia, I am so sorry. I cannot release these funds. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. The ticket is real. I signed it. It is mine. It is not about the ticket validity, she said, turning the monitor so I could see. It is a court order. An emergency injunction was filed this morning at 9 a.m. by a law firm representing Bernard and Estelle Bennett. They are claiming that the ticket is contested marital property and part of a disputed verbal contract. The judge has ordered a complete freeze on the payout until the ownership hearing. I felt the blood drain from my face. My legs went numb. But that is a lie, I whispered. They gave it to me. They threw it at me. Mrs. Higgins sighed, sliding the ticket back into a plastic evidence bag. I believe you, honey. You look like a good person. But until a judge says otherwise, this money sits in the state escrow account. You cannot touch a cent of it. I advise you to call your lawyer immediately. I walked out of the building into the biting wind, feeling heavier than when I walked in. I was a multimillionaire on paper, but in reality, I was worse than broke. I sat in my car and checked my bank account app. The balance was bright red. Negative $13,400. The cruise charge my mother had stolen from me was still pending, and because I had frozen the card, the bank had locked my checking account too while they investigated the fraud. My phone buzzed. It was an email from my landlord. Past due notice. Rent is 3 days late. Please pay immediately to avoid eviction proceedings. The irony was suffocating. I owned $100 million, but I could not afford to buy a sandwich for lunch. I could not pay my rent. I barely had enough gas in my tank to get back to the motel. My family knew exactly what they were doing. They knew I lived paycheck to paycheck. They knew they had drained my liquidity with that stolen credit card charge. They were not trying to win in court. They were trying to starve me out. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My lawyer James picked up on the first ring. "It is bad, Julia," he said without preamble. "They hired Marcus Thorne." I felt a chill run down my spine. Everyone in Chicago knew Marcus Thorne. They called him the Vulture. He was a lawyer who took cases on contingency, meaning he did not charge up front. He took 40% of the winnings. If my family hired him, it meant they had promised him almost half of my money just to destroy me. He filed a motion, claiming you had a standing verbal agreement to share all gambling winnings as a household, James explained. He is arguing that since you were eating their food, and under their roof at the time of the gift, there was an implied contract of shared benefit. It is complete garbage legally speaking, but it is enough to tie us up in court for months, maybe years. Years. I did not have years. I did not have days. Can we fight it? I asked. Of course, James said. But litigation costs money, Julia. Retainers, filing fees, expert witnesses. And since your assets are frozen, he trailed off. He was a good friend, but he was also a lawyer running a business. He could not work for free forever. I hung up and started the car. As I merged onto the highway, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Spencer. I knew I should not look at it, but I could not stop myself. "Hey, big winner. Heard you hit a little speed bump at the lottery office today. Tough break. Mom is really upset. She says she is willing to drop the lawsuit right now if you sign the 50-50 agreement. We get half, you get half. No lawyers, no waiting. You get 50 million cash tomorrow. Or you can keep playing hard to get and starve. Your choice. TikTok Julia." I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. 50-50. They wanted to take $50 million for a $2 ticket they mocked me with. And the worst part was the temptation. For a split second I considered it. I could end the war today. I could have $50 million and never speak to them again. It would be so easy. I was tired, I was hungry, I was scared. But then I remembered the slap. I remembered my mother's face twisted in hate. I remembered Spencer laughing at my muddy boots. If I gave them half, I would be validating their abuse. I would be paying them for treating me like garbage. No. I said it out loud in the empty car. No. I pulled into the motel parking lot. A man in a cheap trench coat was standing by my door. My stomach dropped. I thought it was Spencer again, or maybe my father. But as I got out of the car, the man stepped forward holding a thick manila envelope. "Julia Bennett," he asked. "Yes," I said, warily. "You have been served." He thrust the envelope into my hands and walked away without looking back. I stood there in the cold wind tearing open the seal. It was the official lawsuit. Plaintiff Bernard and Estelle Bennett. Defendant Julia Bennett. I scanned the pages, my eyes blurring with tears of rage. The accusations were monstrous. They accused me of theft, claiming I took the ticket from my mother's purse while she was sleeping. They accused me of elder abuse, claiming I had manipulated them into silence. They claimed I had promised to buy them a house and pay for their medical bills in exchange for the ticket, and then reneged on the deal. Every paragraph was a lie. A calculated, vicious lie designed to paint me as a monster and them as victims. Marcus Thorne knew exactly how to play the media. Once this hit the news, I would be the ungrateful daughter who stole from her elderly parents. I looked at the signature at the bottom. My mother's signature. The same hand that used to sign my permission slips for school. The same hand that slapped me 3 days ago. They were not just coming for the money. They were coming for my reputation, my sanity, and my future. They were willing to burn my entire life to the ground just to get a piece of the prize. I walked into my motel room and threw the lawsuit on the bed. I checked my wallet. I had $40 in cash left. That was it. That was my entire net worth until the judge ruled. I sat on the edge of the bed and ate a granola bar I found in the bottom of my purse. It was my dinner. As I chewed the dry oats, I looked at the lawsuit again. Spencer text flashed in my mind. Starve. They wanted a war of attrition. They thought I would break because I was weak. They thought I was still the little girl who cried when they made fun of her. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Spencer. My fingers were steady. I will see you in court, and bring snacks. It is going to be a long wait because I would rather burn this ticket to ash than give you a single cent. I hit send. Then I blocked his number again. I laid back on the lumpy mattress and stared at the ceiling. I was broke. I was sued. I was alone. But for the first time in my life, I was not afraid of them. I was just angry, and anger, I realized, was a very powerful fuel. They wanted a fight. I was going to give them a war. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. It was not a rhythmic buzzing, but a continuous aggressive hum, like a swarm of angry bees. I reached for it, with sleep-heavy eyes expecting another threatening text from Spencer. But when I unlocked the screen, I was not looking at a text message. I was looking at a notification from TikTok. You have been tagged in a video by Dominique Bennett. The caption read, "The truth about my sister." I sat up in the cheap motel bed, pulling the scratchy blanket around my shoulders and pressed play. Dominique's face filled the screen. She was not wearing her usual heavy makeup. She looked pale with dark circles under her eyes that I suspected were drawn on with eyeshadow. She was sitting in my parents' living room, holding a positive pregnancy test that looked suspiciously like a stock photo printout. "Hey guys," she whispered, her voice cracking perfectly. "I did not want to make this video. I really did not. But my family is hurting right now. As many of you know, my parents won the lottery on Thanksgiving. It was a miracle. We were finally going to pay off the medical bills for my mom back surgery. But my sister Julia took the ticket." She paused to wipe away a non-existent tear. "I was staying at their house because my husband and I are struggling right now. And I am pregnant. I just found out. We were so happy. But Julia stole the ticket from my mom's purse while she was sleeping. And now she has abandoned us. She left me and my unborn baby with nothing. Please just pray for us. We just want our sister back." The video had 3 million views. I scrolled down to the comments. They were a cesspool of hatred. One user wrote, "What a monster. Who does that to a pregnant woman?" Another wrote, "Find her and make her pay." Another posted my full name, my workplace, and my license plate number. My stomach churned. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. They were not just suing me. They were painting a target on my back. Dominique lied about being pregnant. I knew for a fact she had her tubes tied 2 years ago because she told me she never wanted to ruin her figure. But the internet did not know that. To the world, I was the villain in a Hallmark movie gone wrong. I tried to compose myself. I had to go to work. I had a presentation for the city park project. My job was the only thing I had left, the only thing that made sense. I put on my best suit, tried to cover the dark circles under my eyes, and drove to the firm. As I walked into the lobby, the receptionist, who usually greeted me with a smile, looked down at her desk immediately. The silence in the office was deafening. Heads turned as I walked down the hallway. I could hear the whispers. "That is her. That is the one from the video." I reached my cubicle and started unpacking my blueprints. Before I could even turn on my computer, my boss, Mr. Henderson, appeared. He did not look angry. He looked disappointed and tired. "Julia, can I see you in my office for a moment?" I followed him. He did not offer me a seat. He stood behind his desk, shuffling some papers. "Look, Julia, you are a talented architect. This park project is your baby. But we have been getting calls all morning. Hundreds of them. People are threatening to boycott the firm if we employ you. They are spamming our Google reviews with 1-star ratings." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Mr. Henderson, that video is a lie. My sister is lying. I have proof." "It does not matter if it is a lie, Julia," he said softly. "It matters that it is a distraction." The city council called. They are worried about the optics of having a controversial figure leading a public project. "We need to put you on administrative leave, indefinite, without pay." "But my funds are frozen," I pleaded, my voice rising. "If I lose this salary, I cannot pay my rent. I cannot eat." "I am sorry, Julia. Maybe you should resolve things with your family." I walked out of the building carrying a box with a stapler, a succulent plant, and my framed degree. I had built my career for 10 years, brick by brick, late nights, weekends, and Dominique destroyed it in a 60-second video clip. I sat in my car in the parking lot and screamed until my throat was raw. But no one heard me. I was just another crazy woman in a Subaru. On the way back to the motel, I stopped at a grocery store. I had $20 left in cash. I needed bread, peanut butter, and water. I pulled my baseball cap down low and wore sunglasses, hoping to be invisible. I walked through the aisles quickly, grabbing the cheapest items I could find. I was in the checkout line when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around. A woman in her 50s was staring at me. She had a kind face, but her eyes were narrowed. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Julia Bennett?" I hesitated. "No, you must have the wrong person." "You are her," she said, her voice getting louder. "I saw the scar on your chin from the video." "My God! You have a lot of nerve showing your face in public. Your poor mother is heartbroken." People started to look. A man recording on his phone stepped closer. "Is this the lottery thief?" I dropped my basket. I left the bread and the peanut butter on the conveyor belt. I ran. I ran out of the automatic doors into the parking lot, ignoring the shouts behind me. I jumped into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. I drove until I found a secluded spot near the lake. The wind was whipping the water into gray peaks. I was hungry. My stomach was growling a painful, hollow sound. I looked around the car. I found a half-eaten bag of stale pretzels in the glove compartment. I ate them slowly, savoring the salt because it was the only dinner I was going to have. I pulled out my phone. I knew I should not look, but I had to know what they were doing next. I opened a news app. There was a live interview on a local Chicago channel. The headline read, "Family Betrayal. The $100 million Heartbreak." My mother, Estelle, was sitting on a beige couch dabbing her eyes with a tissue. She looked frail. She looked like a saint. "We sacrificed everything for Julia," she told the reporter. "We mortgaged our home to put her through college. We went without vacations so she could have braces. And now, when we are in our twilight years and facing foreclosure, she turns her back on us. We do not even want the money. We just want our daughter to do the right thing." "Liar! You did not pay for my college," I yelled at the tiny screen. "I worked 3 jobs. I am still paying off the loans. You did not pay for my braces, Grandma did." But the reporter nodded sympathetically. "It is a tragedy, Estelle. Hopefully Julia is watching this and finds her conscience." I turned off the phone. The darkness of the car felt like a tomb. I was completely alone. I had no job, no money, no friends who would understand. The entire city hated me. My family had weaponized the world against me. I looked at the lake. For a second I thought about giving up. I thought about driving to their house, giving them the ticket, and begging for forgiveness just so I could eat a warm meal again. Then I tasted the salt from the pretzel. It tasted like tears. No. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to crawl back. If I did that, I would be their slave forever. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card I had kept for 5 years. It was bent at the corners. Leo Vance Private Investigations. We had gone to college together. He was the one guy who knew how to find things that did not want to be found. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. "Yeah, this is Leo. Leo, it is Julia Bennett." There was a long pause. "The lottery girl." "Yeah, the lottery girl. I saw the video, Julia." "Oh. It looks bad. It is all a lie, Leo. Every word. And I need you to prove it. I do not have any money right now," I said, my voice steady. "But I have a winning ticket worth $100 million in a frozen escrow account. If you help me win this, I will pay you double your usual rate. Triple." I heard the flick of a lighter on the other end. "What do you need me to do?" I looked at the city skyline glowing in the distance. Somewhere in that city, my family was celebrating my destruction. I want you to dig, Leo. I want you to find out where the money for the Range Rover came from. I want to know who Dominique Doctor is. I want to know who Spencer is really meeting when he says he is at crypto conferences. I want you to tear their lives apart brick by brick until I find the loose thread that unravels the whole sweater. Leo exhaled smoke. I like the sound of that. I will get started tonight. I hung up. I was still hungry. I was still cold. But the fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had taken my job and my reputation, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had backed me into a corner with nothing left to lose, and a person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous enemy of all. The email from Leo arrived at 2 in the morning. The notification lit up the dark interior of my car where I was sleeping because I could no longer afford the motel room. My neck was stiff and my breath fogged up the windows, but the cold vanished the moment I saw the subject line. It read simply, "The Smoking Gun." I sat up and rubbed my eyes, adjusting the brightness on my phone. I hesitated for a moment. I knew that whatever was in this file would change everything. It was the difference between suspecting my family was evil and knowing it for a fact. I took a deep breath and tapped the screen. The PDF downloaded slowly over the spotty public Wi-Fi signal I was stealing from a nearby coffee shop. The first page was a credit report. Not mine, but my father, Bernard Bennett, the man who always wore tailored suits and lectured me about fiscal responsibility. The man who looked down on me for driving a used Subaru. The numbers on the screen were staggering. Total debt $1.2 million. I gasped aloud. I scrolled down. Credit utilization 100%. Every single card was maxed out. Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire, Citi Prestige. They were all in the red. The report showed a pattern of frantic spending starting 6 months ago. Jewelry stores, 5-star restaurants, luxury car leases, and then the cash advances. Dozens of them. Withdrawals of $5,000 or $10,000 at a time with exorbitant interest rates. They were not just broke, they were drowning. They had been living a lie for half a year, funding their country club lifestyle on borrowed money that they had no way of paying back. And then I saw the line item that made my stomach turn over. Authorized user Julia Bennett. My mother had added me as a user on their sinking ship of a credit account without my knowledge. But she had also done something worse. There was a separate credit line opened in my name 3 months ago using my social security number. It was maxed out, too. $20,000 spent on designer furniture and a trip to Napa Valley. They had not just stolen the cruise money. They had been stealing my identity for months. They were dragging me down into their financial grave before I even knew I was standing on the edge. But that was just the appetizer. The main course was in the second attachment. It was a property title search for the house. The house. My childhood home. The beautiful brick colonial that had been in the Bennett family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought it with money he earned working in the steel mills. It was supposed to be the family legacy. The one thing that was safe. The one thing that was sacred. I stared at the document. A second mortgage had been taken out 6 months ago. A cash-out refinance for $500,000. The stated purpose of the loan was home improvements. But Leo had dug deeper. He had traced the wire transfer of that $500,000. It did not go to a contractor. It did not go to a roof repair company. It went to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, and the signatory for that shell company was Spencer Vance. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the center console. I felt dizzy. My parents had mortgaged the family home, the legacy of my grandfather, to give $500,000 to Spencer. I picked up the phone again and kept reading Leo notes. He had found Spencer crypto wallet addresses. The $500,000 had been dumped into a speculative meme coin called Moon Rocket back in May. 2 weeks later, the coin crashed. The value went to zero. Spencer had lost the family home in 2 weeks. He had gambled away my grandfather's legacy on a digital scam, and my parents had let him. They had bet the house literally on Spencer get-rich-quick scheme. And when it failed, instead of admitting it, instead of downsizing or asking for help, they doubled down. They kept spending. They kept pretending. And when I won the lottery, they saw me not as a daughter, but as a lifeboat. Then I saw the date at the bottom of the bank notice. Notice of default. Foreclosure proceedings initiated. The auction date was set for 10 days from now. 10 days. Everything suddenly made sense: the desperation, the lawsuit, the immediate demand for $50 million. They did not just want to be rich. They needed to stop the bank from seizing the house. They were 10 days away from being homeless. They were 10 days away from the neighbors finding out they were failures. They were 10 days away from their entire social standing evaporating. And they were willing to destroy me to save themselves. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, yes, but also a profound sense of clarity. They were terrified. The monsters under my bed were actually just scared children hiding in a burning house they had lit themselves. I needed to see it. I needed to confirm it with my own eyes. I started the car. The engine sputtered in the cold, but turned over. It was 3 a.m. The streets of Chicago were empty. I drove south towards the suburbs, leaving the safety of the city lights behind. The drive took 40 minutes. I turned onto the familiar tree-lined street. The houses here were large and imposing, sitting back from the road behind manicured hedges. It was the kind of neighborhood where appearances were everything, where a brown patch of grass was a scandal. I slowed down as I approached number 42. The house looked dark and silent. The streetlights cast long shadows across the snow-covered lawn. It looked the same as it always had. The pillars were white and pristine. The windows were clean. The Mercedes and the Range Rover were parked in the driveway, gleaming under the frost. To the outside world, it was the home of a successful, happy family. I idled the car across the street, keeping my headlights off. I scanned the property. At first, I did not see it. Then a gust of wind blew the branches of the large holly bush near the mailbox. There it was. It was small, discreetly placed, but unmistakable. A yellow sign staked into the frozen ground. Notice of foreclosure sale, public auction. Someone had tried to hide it. I could see footprints in the snow leading to the bush. My father, probably. He must have gone out there in the middle of the night to push the sign deep into the foliage, praying the neighbors would not notice while he frantically sued his own daughter for a lifeline. I stared at that sign. It was the symbol of their lies. They were living in a house they no longer owned, driving cars they could not afford, and judging me for my muddy boots. Spencer had called me a miserable witch. My mother had slapped me. My father had sued me, all to cover up the fact that they were frauds. I took a picture of the sign with my phone, zooming in until the words were legible. Then I took a picture of the timestamp on my dashboard. I sent the photos to Leo with a single line of text. I have the leverage. Now find me the dirt on the affair. I want to bury them completely. I put the car in gear and drove away. I did not look back at the house. I did not feel sad for them anymore. The house was already gone. They just did not know it yet. And in 10 days, when the gavel banged at that auction, I was going to be the one holding the hammer. I drove back toward the city as the first light of dawn began to crack the horizon. The sky was turning a bruised purple. I was still homeless. I was still broke. But for the first time in my life, I held all the cards. They had 10 days. I had $100 million waiting in escrow. The clock was ticking. And I was going to enjoy every single second of the countdown. They wanted a family reunion. Well, I was going to give them one they would never forget. I touched the bruise on my cheek where my mother had hit me. It still hurt, but the pain was different now. It was fuel. 10 days, Mom, I whispered to the empty car. Let us see who survives. While my mother was busy crying on television, and my sister was staging fake pregnancy photo shoots for sympathy likes, Spencer was supposedly working tirelessly to resolve our family financial crisis. According to his text messages to me, he was meeting with high-level investors to save the house. He claimed he was so stressed he could barely eat. But the man I was watching through the tinted window of Leo's surveillance van did not look stressed. He looked triumphant. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee while Leo adjusted the focus on his long-range camera. We were parked across the street from the Meridian, one of the most exclusive high-rise apartment buildings in downtown Chicago. It was a place where rent started at $5,000 a month. It was definitely not a place for a man who had supposedly lost everything in a crypto crash. "There he is," Leo whispered. I leaned forward. Spencer walked out of the revolving doors. He was wearing a new cashmere coat and carrying a bouquet of long-stem red roses. He checked his reflection in the glass, smoothed his hair, and smiled. It was a smile I had never seen him give my sister. It was genuine. "He is not looking for investors," I said quietly. "He is looking for a date." He walked down the block and met a woman waiting by a black sedan. She was young, beautiful, and undeniably expensive. She wore a cream-colored coat that barely buttoned over her midsection. Leo zoomed in with the lens. "Look at that, Julia. That is not a food baby." I stared at the screen. The woman was pregnant. Clearly pregnant. At least 4 or 5 months along. She placed a hand on her stomach protectively as Spencer leaned in to kiss her. It was a passionate, lingering kiss that made my stomach turn. "That is his executive assistant," I said, realizing who she was. "I met her at the Christmas party last year. Her name is Ashley." Dominique had been posting photos all week, holding her stomach, claiming the stress I caused was hurting her unborn child. But I knew Dominique. She was terrified of stretch marks and had sworn she would never have kids naturally. Her pregnancy was a pillow and a lie. But this was real. They got into the car and Leo started the van. We followed them to a French bistro 3 blocks away. It was intimate and dimly lit, the kind of place you go when you do not want to be found. Leo parked down the street and pulled out a parabolic microphone. It looked like a small satellite dish. "This little toy can pick up a whisper from 300 feet away," Leo said, putting on his headphones. He handed me the spare pair. "Put these on. You are going to want to hear this." I slid the headphones over my ears. The world went silent, except for the amplified sounds coming from the bistro patio, where Spencer had requested a table under the heat lamps. The sound of silverware clinking was sharp. Then Spencer's voice came through clear as a bell. "Baby, you have to be patient," he was saying, holding Ashley's hand across the table. "I know it is annoying that I have to go back to the house tonight, but we are in the end game now. But you promised we would be in Italy by Christmas." Ashley whined. Her voice was high and petulant. "I am tired of hiding Spencer, and the baby is kicking. You said you were leaving her months ago." "I am leaving her," Spencer said, taking a sip of wine. "Listen to me. The plan is working perfectly. The lawsuit has completely paralyzed Julia. My lawyer says she is going to break any day now. She is weak. She has no money, no job, and the whole city hates her. She will sign the settlement just to make it stop." I gripped the armrest of the van. He was betting on my weakness. He was counting on me being the scared little girl I used to be. "And once she signs," Ashley asked. "Once she signs, we take our 50% cut," Spencer said. "That is $50 million minus the lawyer's fees. That gives us about $30 million clear. As soon as that wire hits my account, I am filing for divorce. I will tell Dominique the stress was too much. I will give her the house or what is left of it, and I will be on a plane to Tuscany with you that same night." "But what about the foreclosure?" Ashley asked. "You said the bank is taking the house in 10 days. Spencer laughed. A cold, cruel sound. "Exactly. That is the beauty of it. By the time the bank seizes the house, we will be gone. Dominique and her parents will be homeless and penniless, and I will be drinking Chianti with you on a vineyard. They are sinking ships, babe. And I am not going down with them." I felt the bile rise in my throat. It was not just greed, it was a slaughter. He was not just stealing from me. He was planning to leave his wife and my parents with absolutely nothing, not even a roof over their heads, while he ran off with his mistress and his secret child. He was the architect of their destruction, and they were treating him like a savior. They deserve it, Spencer continued. You should see them. Bernard and Estelle are pathetic. They actually think I am a genius investor. And Dominique, God, she is so vain she thinks her fake pregnancy is going to trap me. She does not know I swapped her birth control pills out for sugar pills a year ago, hoping for an accident, but she is too barren to even conceive. I tore the headphones off. I could not listen to any more. I was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. Did you get that? I asked Leo. Every word he said, tapping the digital recorder. This is a nuclear bomb, Julia. If you release this recording, the judge will throw out their lawsuit immediately. It proves bad faith. It proves conspiracy. It proves he is manipulating the entire family. I looked at the recorder. It was the key to my freedom. I could upload it to the internet right now. I could send it to Dominique. I could send it to the news stations that were vilifying me. It would end everything tonight. Leo reached for his laptop. Do you want me to leak it to TMZ? I have a contact. We can have this trending in an hour. I hesitated. I looked at Spencer on the screen, laughing as he touched his mistress' stomach. If I released it now, he would just run. He would disappear like a cockroach when the lights turn on, and my parents would spin it. They would say I faked the recording. They would say I was jealous. They were too deep in their delusion to believe the truth unless it hit them in the face. No, I said. Leo looked at me surprised. No. Julia, this clears your name. It is too easy, I said, staring at Spencer's face on the screen. If I release this now, he gets away. He just leaves. I do not want him to leave. I want him to pay. I looked at the date on my phone. The foreclosure auction was in 3 days. The settlement meeting my family had demanded was scheduled for tomorrow night. They wanted to bully me into signing away half my fortune. I want a copy of that recording, I told Leo. And I want prints of those photos. High resolution. What are you going to do? Leo asked. I am going to accept their invitation, I said. They want a family meeting. They want to talk about the future, so I am going to give them a glimpse of it. I looked back at the screen one last time. Spencer was kissing Ashley's hand, unaware that his entire life was sitting in a digital file in a van across the street. Keep recording Leo. I want everything. Where he sleeps, what he buys, every lie he tells. Because tomorrow night I am not just bringing a lawsuit to the dinner table, I am bringing the truth. And I am going to serve it cold. I sat back in the seat watching the rain streak against the glass. I touched the ticket in my pocket. They wanted $50 million. Instead, I was going to give them a front row seat to their own funeral. Spencer Vance was going to learn that there is one thing you never do to a woman who has been underestimated her entire life. You never give her the time to plan. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I smiled. The trap was set. All I had to do now was walk into the lion den and close the door behind me. The phone felt heavy in my hand like a loaded gun. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, parked 2 streets away from the apartment I could no longer afford. Rain drummed a steady rhythm on the roof, matching the frantic beating of my heart. I had the evidence. I had the photos of the foreclosure sign. I had the audio recording of Spencer conspiring with his mistress. I had the credit reports showing my parents' fraud. I had everything I needed to destroy them. But to do it right, I needed them all in one room. I needed them comfortable. I needed them arrogant. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of stale coffee and cold air. I let my shoulders slump. I practiced the tremor in my voice. I needed to sound like the daughter they knew, the weak one, the one who crumbled under pressure, the one who apologized for taking up space. I dialed my mother number. It rang only once. She must have been sitting by the phone waiting for me to break. Hello? Her voice was sharp-clipped. "Mom." I let my voice crack. "It is Julia." There was a pause, a calculated silence designed to make me squirm. "Well, I assume you are calling to apologize for the humiliation you have caused this family." I closed my eyes, summoning every ounce of acting ability I possessed. "I am tired, Mom. I cannot do this anymore. The news, the people staring at me, losing my job. You win. I just want it to stop." I heard the intake of breath on the other end, the sound of victory. "I told your father you would come around eventually," Estelle said, her voice instantly shifting from cold to sickly sweet. "We only did this for your own good, Julia. We knew you were not capable of handling that kind of money alone. It is a burden, darling. We are just trying to lift that burden off your shoulders." I bit my lip so hard I tasted iron. "Yeah, I see that now. I want to sign. I want to settle." "Excellent. I will call Marcus Thorne immediately. We can meet at his office tomorrow morning at 9. "No," I interrupted. "Not his office." My mother paused, suspicious. "Why not?" "Because if I am going to sign away $50 million, I want to do it with some dignity," I said, injecting a note of childish petulance into my tone. "I want a proper dinner. I want to feel like we are a family again, not like a business transaction." I could practically hear her calculating. She probably thought I was being dramatic, but if it got her the money, she would agree to anything. "Fine. Where do you want to go?" "Olive Garden." "No, Mom. The Signature Room. On the 95th floor of the Hancock Center." The Signature Room was the most expensive restaurant in Chicago. It had panoramic views of the entire city and the lake. It was where people got engaged or closed multi-million-dollar deals. It was a place my parents had gone to many times without me. The Signature. My mother sounded impressed. "Well, I suppose we can afford it now, or rather, we will be able to afford it once you sign. I want the private VIP room, the glass one, and I want everyone there, you, Dad, Dominique, Spencer, and the lawyers. I want this done once and for all in front of witnesses, so no one can ever say I did not do the right thing." "Done," she said quickly. "I will make the reservation for 7 p.m. tomorrow. Dress nicely, Julia. Please do not embarrass us with those work boots." I hung up. I stared at the phone screen until it went black. They took the bait. They were probably popping champagne right now, laughing about how easy it was to break me. They thought they had won. They thought I was retreating to the high ground to surrender. They did not realize I was bringing them up to the 95th floor, just to push them off the edge. I started the car and drove. I had one stop to make. For 32 years I had been the invisible girl, the girl with the messy bun and the practical clothes, the girl who blended into the background while Dominique sparkled, the girl who looked like she apologized for existing. That girl died the moment my mother slapped me. I pulled up to a high-end salon in the Gold Coast district. I had $400 left on a hidden credit card I had kept for emergencies. This was an emergency. I walked in. The receptionist looked at my muddy boots and my tired face with skepticism. "Can I help you?" "I need a cut and color," I said, "and I need a makeup artist." "We are fully booked," she started to say. I placed the platinum card on the counter. It was the one card my mother had not managed to steal because I kept it in a safe deposit box. "I am not asking. I am paying. I have a very important dinner tomorrow night, and I need to look like someone who owns the place." 3 hours later, I sat in the stylist chair and looked at the stranger in the mirror. The long, mousy brown hair that I usually wore in a ponytail was gone. In its place was a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed my jawline like a blade. It was dyed a deep, rich mahogany that caught the light. It made me look taller. It made me look dangerous. The makeup artist finished applying the lipstick. It was not pink. It was not nude. It was a deep blood red, a shade called Vendetta. I stared at myself. The tired eyes were gone, hidden behind smoky shadow that made my gaze intense and piercing. The scar on my chin from the slap was covered. I looked like a CEO. I looked like a predator. I walked out of the salon and went to a consignment shop next door. I found a dress. It was black silk, simple but devastatingly elegant. It fit like a second skin. I bought a pair of stilettos that added 3 inches to my height. When I got back to my car, I received a text from Leo. Everything is ready. I sent the files to your secure cloud. I also found something else about Dominique. You are going to love this. I opened the file. It was a medical record from a fertility clinic dated 2 years ago. Tubal ligation. Patient request. Dominique had sterilized herself voluntarily. She physically could not be pregnant. I laughed. It was a cold, hard sound in the empty car. The fake pregnancy, the fake happy marriage, the fake wealth. It was all a house of cards. And tomorrow night, I was going to open the window and let the wind blow it all down. I drove to the lakefront and parked. I watched the city lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere in that skyline was the Hancock Center, towering above everything else. Tomorrow night my family would walk into that building thinking they were about to become royalty. They would order expensive wine. They would look down on the city and feel like gods. They had no idea that the girl they were meeting was not the daughter they raised. Julia, the landscape architect, was gone. Julia, the doormat, was gone. I touched the cold glass of the window. My reflection looked back at me. The sharp hair, the dark eyes. My mother told me to dress nicely. She told me not to embarrass them. I smiled, and the red lipstick looked like a warning sign. Do not worry, Mom. I am going to be the most memorable thing in that room. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the scratch-off ticket. I had moved it to a waterproof pouch taped to my ribs. It was safe. It was real. $100 million. But honestly, as I sat there watching the waves crash against the shore, I realized the money was just a tool. The real prize was not the cash. The real prize was seeing the look on Spencer's face when I played that recording. The real prize was seeing my mother's face when the police walked in. I closed my eyes and visualized the dinner. I rehearsed my lines. I practiced my pause. I practiced the exact moment I would signal the waiters. The prey had invited the predators to dinner. But they forgot one thing. When you corner a wounded animal, you better make sure it is dead. Because if it survives, it learns how to hunt. I started the engine. I had 24 hours to prepare. I was going to enjoy every single minute of it. The old Julia would have been hyperventilating. The new Julia was just hungry. And tomorrow night, I was going to eat. The elevator ride to the 95th floor of the John Hancock Center usually makes your ears pop, but tonight the only pressure I felt was the weight of the evidence taped against my ribs. The doors slid open, revealing the panoramic view of Chicago at night, a sprawling grid of gold and amber lights stretching into the darkness of Lake Michigan. It was breathtaking. It was expensive. It was the perfect setting for an execution. I walked into the private glass-walled dining room where my family was already seated. The transformation in their demeanor was almost comical. Yesterday they were screaming at me through a door. Today they stood up as I entered, beaming with the kind of warmth usually reserved for lottery winners. My mother, Estelle, rushed forward to hug me, but I stiffened slightly and she pulled back, her smile faltering for a microsecond before she recovered. "You look stunning, Julia," she said, eyeing my new haircut and the silk dress. "See what a little effort does. You finally look like a Bennett." I sat at the head of the table. I had arranged the seating chart myself. I wanted a clear view of the door. To my right sat Marcus Thorne, the shark lawyer they had hired to sue me. To my left sat Spencer and Dominique. My parents took the other end. The waiter approached a young man in a crisp white tuxedo. "Shall we start with drinks?" My father Bernard did not even look at the menu. "We will take 2 bottles of the Chateau Margaux 2015. And bring the seafood tower, the large one, with the Osetra caviar. I did the mental math. That order alone was over $3,000. They were ordering with an arrogance that made my stomach turn. They were spending money they did not have banking on the signature they expected to get from me by dessert. The wine arrived and the toasts began. Spencer raised his glass, his eyes glittering with greed. To family, and to coming to our senses. I raised my glass but did not drink. I just watched them. I watched my mother devour the lobster with a hunger that seemed desperate. I watched Dominique taking selfies with the caviar, posing with a pouty face that she immediately posted to her stories. "Hey guys," she chirped into her phone, angling the camera so it showed the luxury food but only the back of my head. "We are celebrating a huge family milestone tonight. My sister has finally decided to do the right thing and support the family legacy. It takes a big person to admit they were wrong." She ended the live stream and looked at me. "You are lucky I am framing it this way, Julia. I could have destroyed you. But I am generous." Spencer laughed, cutting into a Wagyu steak that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "Do not be too hard on her, babe. Julia is a slow learner. She just needed a little push." "Right, Julia. You realize that fighting us was a losing battle. You realize that without us, you are just a lonely landscape architect with a lot of money and no friends." I sliced my steak slowly, the knife cutting through the meat with surgical precision. "You are right, Spencer. I did realize something. I realized that family is the most expensive thing in the world." He smirked, missing the double meaning entirely. "Exactly. And you are finally paying your dues." The dinner dragged on for an hour. I let them eat, I let them drink. I wanted them full and sluggish. I wanted them to feel safe. I listened to their plans. My father talked about buying a vacation home in Aspen. My mother talked about upgrading her diamond ring. Dominique talked about the nursery she was going to build for her imaginary baby. They were carving up my life like it was the turkey on the table. Finally, Marcus Thorne cleared his throat. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. He placed it in front of me with a heavy thud. "Well, I think we have enjoyed the hospitality long enough. Let us get down to business." He opened the document to the last page. "As we discussed on the phone, Julia, this is a comprehensive settlement agreement. By signing this, you agree that the lottery ticket was a joint family asset. In exchange for dropping all lawsuits and non-disclosure agreements regarding the unfortunate credit card mix-up, the funds will be distributed as follows." He pointed to the numbers. Estelle and Bernard Bennett, $50 million. Dominique and Spencer Vance, $40 million. Julia Bennett, $10 million. I stared at the paper. 10 million. They were leaving me with 10%. After taxes and fees, I would barely have enough to retire comfortably while they became tycoons. But that is not what we discussed. I said, my voice quiet. Spencer said 50-50. Spencer shrugged, picking his teeth with a toothpick. "Markets change, Julia. Consider the 40 million difference a tax for being difficult. Plus 10 million is more money than you will ever know what to do with. You are simple. You do not need much." My mother reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Her palm was clammy. "Just sign it, darling. End this nightmare. Let us go back to being a happy family. We can all go on that cruise together. Just think. No more lawyers, no more reporters, just us." I looked at her. I looked at the fear hiding behind her eyes. She knew the foreclosure clock was ticking. She needed this signature tonight or she would lose everything. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen provided by the lawyer. The room went silent. Even the waiters seemed to hold their breath. All 5 pairs of eyes were glued to my hand. I hovered the pen over the signature line. "Is this really what you want?" I asked, looking up. "You want to take 90% of what I have. You want to strip me bare." "It is what is fair," my father said sternly. "We made you, Julia. We are entitled to a return on our investment." I looked at Spencer. "And you? You think you deserve $40 million? "I earned it," he said with a wink. "Managing this family is a full-time job." I nodded slowly. I lowered the pen. The tip touched the paper. Ink began to bleed into the fiber. Then I stopped. I set the pen down next to the contract. "What are you doing?" my mother hissed. "Sign it." "I cannot," I said calmly. "Why not?" Spencer slammed his hand on the table, making the wine glasses jump. "Because I realized we are missing a few guests," I said. I looked up at the waiter standing by the door and gave a subtle nod. "Guests?" Dominique asked, looking around. "Who did you invite?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Well, since we are talking about investments and returns, I thought we should invite the people who actually funded your lifestyle." The heavy glass doors of the private dining room swung open. The conversation in the main restaurant died down as three figures walked in. They were not waiters. They were not friends. Two of them were uniformed police officers. Their faces were grim, their hands resting near their belts. Between them walked a man in a gray suit carrying a briefcase. My father dropped his fork. It clattered loudly onto the fine china. He knew the man in the gray suit. It was Mr. Henderson, the regional manager of the bank that held the mortgage on our family home. "What is this?" Spencer stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Who called the cops?" "I did," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Mr. Henderson walked up to the table. He did not look happy. He looked at my father with profound disappointment. "Bernard, I received a very disturbing call from Ms. Bennett regarding the status of the collateral on your loan, and these officers are here regarding a federal complaint of identity theft and wire fraud." My mother's face turned the color of the white tablecloth. She looked at me, and for the first time she did not see her daughter. She saw the executioner. I picked up the contract and ripped the last page in half. "I am not signing anything," I said. "But do not worry, Mom. I promise to pay for dinner. And trust me, you are going to pay for everything else." The officers stepped forward. "Estelle Bennett, Spencer Vance, please stand up and place your hands behind your back." The dinner of vultures was over, and the slaughter had just begun. The room was so quiet that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like a jet engine. My father had dropped his fork, and it lay on the white tablecloth like a silver scar. My mother, Estelle, was staring at the two uniformed officers with her mouth slightly open, a piece of lobster still poised on her fork. Spencer looked ready to run, his eyes darting toward the emergency exit. But I was calm. For the first time in my life, sitting at a table with my family, I was completely and utterly calm. I pushed my chair back, and the scraping sound made everyone jump. I stood up, smoothing the black silk of my dress. I walked slowly over to the wall-mounted television screen that dominated the private room. I picked up the remote control. "Before we talk about dividing my lottery winnings, I think we need to balance the books," I said, my voice steady and low. "You handed me a contract that talks about assets, about returns on investment. But you forgot one very important column: liabilities." "What are you doing?" Julia, my father demanded, finding his voice. "Sit down. You are making a scene." "Mr. Henderson, why are you here?" "This is a private family dinner." "Mr. Henderson." The bank manager did not look at my father. He looked at the floor, shaking his head sadly. "I am here because I was subpoenaed, Bernard, and because I have a duty to report federal crimes when they occur within my institution." "Crimes?" My mother laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Do not be ridiculous. We are upstanding citizens." I pressed the button on the remote. The large screen flickered to life. I had connected it to my phone earlier while they were busy ordering $1,000 wine. An image filled the screen. It was high-resolution, crisp, and undeniable. It was a credit card application form. The date was 6 months ago. The name on the applicant line was Julia Bennett. The social security number was mine. The address was my parents' house. But at the bottom on the signature line was a handwriting style that I knew better than my own. It was loopy with a distinctive flourish on the B. It was the same signature that was on my report cards growing up. The same signature on the permission slips. Does everyone recognize this? I asked, pointing to the screen. My mother went pale. Her hand started to tremble, and the lobster fell from her fork onto the pristine tablecloth, leaving a red stain. That looks like a credit application, my lawyer Marcus Thorne said, leaning forward and squinting. It is, I said. It is an application for a platinum card with a $50,000 limit. It was opened in my name without my knowledge. And in the last 6 months, it has been maxed out. Designer clothes, spa treatments, a trip to Napa, and just last week, a $13,500 cruise package. I clicked the remote again. A new image appeared. It was a close-up of the signature side by side with a birthday card my mother had given me years ago. The match was perfect. Estelle, my father whispered, looking at his wife. You said you used your own credit. You told me you handled it. I did handle it, she snapped, her eyes wild. I handled it for the family. Julia has good credit. We needed the liquidity. I was going to pay it back eventually. You stole my identity, Mom, I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a judge gavel. You forged my signature. You used my social security number. You racked up debt in my name that destroyed my credit score. You let me believe I was failing financially while you were wearing my credit limit on your wrist. That is not stealing, she screamed, standing up. I am your mother. I gave you life. Everything you have belongs to me. A credit card. Are you serious, Julia? You are going to ruin this dinner over a credit card when you have $100 million sitting in a trust fund. Pay it off and shut up. The entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. She truly believed she had the right to consume me, to spend my future to fund her present. Mr. Henderson stepped forward. Mrs. Bennet, I am afraid it is not that simple. When you use the banking system to commit fraud across state lines, it becomes a federal offense. The bank has a zero-tolerance policy for identity theft, even if the victim is a family member. One of the police officers stepped forward. The heavy jingle of his utility belt cut through the tension. He walked around the table, his boots thudding on the carpet. He stopped behind my mother's chair. Estelle Bennet, he said, his voice flat and professional. We have a warrant for your arrest for 3 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of aggravated identity theft, and 1 count of grand larceny. My mother looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. Arrest. You cannot arrest me. I am eating dinner. I am Estelle Bennet. Do you know who my husband is? Ma, and please stand up and place your hands behind your back. No, she shrieked, clutching the tablecloth. Julia, tell them to stop. This is a joke, right? This is some sick, twisted joke because you are mad about the slap. Okay, I am sorry. I am sorry I slapped you. Now tell them to leave. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had terrorized me for 32 years. The woman who made me feel small so she could feel big. The woman who stole from me and then demanded I thank her for it. I am not mad about the slap, Mom, I said. I am mad because you broke the law. You stole $13,500 from me last week. In the state of Illinois, theft over $10,000 is a Class 2 felony. You ungrateful little witch, she screamed, lunging toward me. I will kill you. I will. The officer moved fast. He grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. She yelped in pain. The second officer grabbed her other wrist. The sound of metal ratcheting shut was loud and final. Click, click. My mother was handcuffed. The restaurant had gone silent. Through the glass walls I could see other diners standing up, pointing their phones, recording the scene. But the most important camera was much closer. I looked at Dominique. She was frozen in her chair, her mouth hanging open. But her hand was still holding her phone up. The live stream was still running. The comments were scrolling by so fast they were a blur. Keep filming, Dominique, I said coldly. The world loves a tragedy. My father stood up, knocking his chair over. Julia, stop this. She is your mother. You cannot let them take her to jail. She has a bad back. She cannot sleep on a cot. Drop the charges. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. We will sign the agreement. We will give you 20 million. Just stop this. It is out of my hands, Dad, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. The state is pressing charges, and Mr. Henderson has already filed the fraud report. Even if I wanted to save her, I could not. She committed a crime. She has to pay the price. My mother was crying now. Ugly mascara-stained tears running down her face. Bernard, do something. Call the mayor. Call someone. Do not let them take me. The officers began to march her toward the door. She struggled, her heels dragging on the carpet. Everyone was watching. The servers, the guests, her friends from the country club who happened to be dining 3 tables away. She was being paraded in her shame. As they reached the door, she turned back to look at me. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. You are dead to me, Julia. Do you hear me? You have no mother. I picked up my glass and took a sip of water. I looked her right in the eye. I haven't had a mother in a long time, Estelle. I just had a thief who lived in my house. The doors closed behind her, cutting off her screams. The room was deathly silent. My father sank back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Spencer was staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. Dominique finally lowered her phone, her hand shaking violently. I sat back down. I picked up my fork and speared a piece of the Wagyu beef that was getting cold on my plate. I took a bite. I took a lay. It was delicious. I swallowed and looked around the table at the survivors. Okay, I said, wiping my mouth with the linen napkin. Now that we have handled the identity theft, let us talk about the real estate fraud. Mr. Henderson, why don't you tell my father who actually owns the house he is sleeping in tonight? My father's head snapped up. His eyes were red-rimmed and terrified. He looked at Mr. Henderson, then at me, then at Spencer. Spencer started to push his chair back. I need to use the restroom, he stammered. Sit down, Spencer, I commanded, my voice cracking like a whip. He froze. No one leaves, I said. We have only just started the first course. And I promised you a night you would never forget. I signaled the waiter again. Bring the next bottle of wine, please. My family is going to need a stiff drink for what comes next. The silence in the private dining room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a gunshot. The heavy wooden doors had clicked shut behind the police officers, dragging my mother away in handcuffs, leaving a void that felt suffocating. My father, Bernard, was standing by the table, his face a mask of gray ash. He looked at the empty chair where his wife had just been sitting. Then he looked at me, and finally he turned his desperate gaze to Mr. Henderson, the bank manager. My father straightened his tie, a reflex of a man who believes that appearance can fix reality. Bill, he said, his voice shaking, but trying to sound authoritative. Bill, I am sorry you had to see that. Estelle is dramatic. We will get that sorted out in the morning. But regarding the house, I think there has been a mistake. I spoke to the loan officer last week. We are restructuring. I have the paperwork at home. Mr. Henderson did not blink. He held his briefcase with both hands, standing tall and immovable. He was not a friend tonight. He was an institution. There is no paperwork, Bernard. I personally reviewed your file this morning. You have missed 6 consecutive mortgage payments. You have ignored 3 certified letters of default. You ignored the foreclosure notice posted on your front door, which I assume you pulled down before the neighbors could see. My father flinched as if he had been slapped. He gripped the back of his chair, his knuckles turning white. It is a temporary liquidity issue, he stammered. We have assets. We have the lottery ticket. Julia is going to sign the agreement and we will bring the account current tomorrow. He looked at me, expecting me to nod, expecting me to jump in and save him, because that is what I had always done. I was the safety net they walked all over. Mr. Henderson shook his head slowly. It is too late for that, Bernard. The bank initiated the acceleration clause 30 days ago. The full balance of the mortgage is due. All $1.2 million. And since you failed to pay, the property was scheduled for public auction tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, my father whispered. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Spencer Vance, who had been trying to make himself invisible in the corner, suddenly spoke up. Well, that is fine. We can fix this. Julia, just give him the money, pay off the house. It is a drop in the bucket for you now. Consider it rent for all the years you lived there. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Rent? You want me to pay rent for the room I grew up in, the room where I was treated like a servant? Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, turning his attention away from my father. Actually, the auction has been cancelled. My father let out a long, ragged breath. Oh, thank God. See, Spencer, I told you. Bill is a reasonable man. Thank you, Bill. We will get you a check next week. The auction was not cancelled because of a favor Bernard Mr. Henderson said, cutting him off coldly. It was cancelled because the debt was purchased. My father froze. Purchased? What do you mean? This morning at 9 a.m., a private investor contacted the bank. They offered to buy the distressed note for the full value of the principal, plus all outstanding fees and penalties. The bank accepted the offer. We have transferred the deed and all rights to the property to the new lion holder. My father looked around the room confused. Who? Who bought it? Mr. Henderson turned slowly. He looked at me. He gestured with his open hand like a presenter unveiling a masterpiece. Ms. Julia Bennett is the new sole owner of the mortgage note. The sound of a glass shattering broke the silence. Dominique had dropped her water glass. Water pooled on the tablecloth, dripping onto her expensive dress, but she did not move. She stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. My father looked at me. He looked at the daughter he had called a failure, the daughter he had tried to swindle. You, he whispered, you bought the house. I took a sip of my wine. It tasted like victory. I bought the debt, Dad, which means I own the loan. And since you are in default, I have the right to foreclose immediately. But I decided to save us all the legal fees of a court battle. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was an eviction notice printed on heavy legal bond. I slid it across the table. It stopped right in front of my father. This is a notice to vacate, I said, my voice calm and conversational. Since I am now the owner of the property and you are delinquent tenants, I am exercising my right to take possession. You have 24 hours. 24 hours! My father gasped, clutching his chest. You cannot do this. That is our home. Your grandfather built that house. It is the family legacy. It was the family legacy, I corrected him. Until you used it as a piggy bank, until you mortgaged it to the hilt to fund a lifestyle you could not afford. And speaking of funding, let us talk about where that equity went. I turned my gaze to Spencer. He was sweating now. Beads of perspiration were glistening on his forehead under the expensive lights of the restaurant. He avoided my eyes, looking down at his plate of half-eaten steak. Dad, do you know why you are broke? I asked. Do you know why you had to take out a second mortgage 6 months ago, the $500,000 you cashed out? My father looked confused. We invested it. Spencer said he had a sure thing, a crypto arbitrage opportunity. He said it would triple in 3 months. I looked at Spencer. Triple? Is that what you told them, Spencer? Spencer stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. I need to go. I am not feeling well. Sit down, Spencer, I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. He collapsed back into the chair, looking like a trapped rat. Mr. Henderson, would you mind telling my father where that wire transfer went? I asked. Mr. Henderson opened his folder. The $500,000 was wired to a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Vance Global Holdings. From there, it was transferred to a digital wallet. We traced the wallet. The funds were used to purchase a speculative coin called Moon Rocket. And what is Moon Rocket worth today, Mr. Henderson? Mr. Henderson closed the folder. It was a rug pull scam, Mrs. Bennett. The value went to zero 2 weeks after the purchase. The money is gone. My father slowly turned his head towards Spencer. The realization was washing over him like a tidal wave. The genius son-in-law, the financial wizard, the man he had praised while belittling me. "You lost it," my father whispered. "You lost the house." Spencer stammered, his hands shaking. "It was a market correction, Bernard. I could not predict it. It was supposed to go to the moon." "You gambled my house," my father roared, his face turning purple. "You gambled my father house on a cartoon coin, and you let him, Dad," I said quietly. "You trusted him because he wore a nice suit and told you what you wanted to hear. You trusted him because he was a man, and you treated me like the help because I actually worked for a living." I stood up. I walked over to the window looking out at the city lights. "So here is the deal. You have until tomorrow at 7 p.m. I want you out. I want your clothes packed. I want your personal items in boxes. Leave the furniture. Leave the art. That belongs to the house, and the house belongs to me." "Julia, please," my father begged, tears streaming down his face. "Where will we go? Your mother is in jail. I have nowhere." I turned back to face them. "I do not know, Dad. Maybe you can stay with Spencer. I hear he has a very nice apartment downtown. Or maybe you can ask Dominique to sell some of her designer bags. I am sure they are worth a few nights at a motel." I picked up my purse. "You have 24 hours. If you are not out by 7 p.m., I will have the sheriff remove you for trespassing. And Dad," he looked up at me, a broken man, "clean the carpets before you leave. I do not want any mud on my floor." I turned and walked toward the door. Mr. Henderson followed me. The police officers were already gone with my mother. Behind me I heard the sound of my father sobbing, a deep, guttural sound of a man who had lost everything. And then I heard Dominique's voice, sharp and shrill, screaming at Spencer. "You liar! You told me we were rich." I walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. The elevator ride down was silent, but my mind was loud. I had taken their home. I had taken their pride. But I was not done. There was still one more lie to expose, one more layer of the onion to peel back. Spencer thought he could hide behind the chaos. He thought the loss of the house would distract Dominique from his other secrets, but he was wrong. I was going to burn it all down. I took out my phone and texted Leo. "Phase 2 is complete. Get the photos ready. We are not just taking their house, we are taking their marriage." I stepped into the waiting car. The war was almost over, and I was the only one left standing. The silence in the room was heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sound of my father weeping softly into his hands. My mother was gone, taken away in handcuffs. The house was gone, seized by the very daughter they had scorned. And now there were only 3 of us left at the table: me, Dominique, and Spencer. Spencer looked at the empty chair where my mother had sat, then at the eviction notice in front of my father. He loosened his tie, his fingers fumbling with the silk knot as if it were a noose. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, which was now damp with sweat. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was a survivor, a parasite, and parasites always look for a new host when the old one starts to die. He turned to me and forced a smile. It was the most grotesque thing I had ever seen. It was a smile that tried to summon years of false charm and brotherhood. "Come on, Julia," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "We are all emotional right now. Things got out of hand. But look at us. We are the younger generation. We are the future of this family. We cannot let the mistakes of our parents destroy what we have." He took a step toward me, his hands open in a pleading gesture. "I am your brother-in-law, Julia. I have always looked out for you. Remember when I helped you move into your apartment? Remember when I fixed your flat tire? We are family. You cannot just destroy family over money. Let us put the house behind us. Let us send the lawyers away. We can work this out. Just you and me." I watched him with a detached curiosity, like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. He was truly rewriting history in real time. He had helped me move because my mother forced him to, and he had complained the entire time. He had never fixed my tire. I picked up my wine glass and swirled the dark red liquid. Family. I repeated the word, tasting it. You keep using that word, Spencer. It is a powerful word. It implies loyalty. It implies love. It implies that you do not keep secrets that could destroy the people sitting across from you. Spencer's eyes darted back and forth. What do you mean? I have no secrets. I am an open book. I am doing this for Dominique. For our baby. I looked at Dominique. She was sitting frozen, still clutching her phone, staring at the eviction notice. She looked small and fragile, her hand resting protectively on her round, protruding belly. For the baby, I said softly. That is very noble of you, Spencer. You are such a dedicated father. It is amazing how you find the time to care for Dominique's unborn child while you are also taking such good care of the other one. The room went deadly still. Spencer's face drained of all color, leaving him looking like a wax figure. Dominique slowly lifted her head. What other one? She whispered. I reached into my purse. This time I did not pull out a legal document. I pulled out a thick stack of high-resolution photographs. I fanned them out on the table, sending them sliding across the white linen until they stopped right in front of Dominique. I think you should meet the rest of Spencer family, I said. Dominique. This is Jessica. Dominique looked down. The photos were brutal in their clarity. They showed Spencer walking out of the Meridian apartment building, holding hands with a stunning woman in a cream coat. They showed him kissing her neck at a bistro. They showed him shopping for diamond earrings, the same earrings he claimed he could not afford to buy Dominique for their anniversary. But the most damning photo was the one on top. It showed Spencer placing his hand lovingly on Jessica's stomach. A stomach that was unmistakably pregnant. Dominique stared at the images. Her breathing became shallow and rapid. Her hands started to shake so violently that her diamond bracelets rattled against the china. Who is she? Dominique asked, her voice barely a squeak. She is his executive assistant, I explained. The one he told you was annoying and incompetent. It turns out she is actually very competent, especially at helping him plan his escape. I played the audio file on my phone. It was the recording from the bistro. Spencer's voice filled the room loud and clear. As soon as that wire hits my account, I am filing for divorce. I will tell Dominique the stress was too much. I will give her the house, or what is left of it, and I will be on a plane to Tuscany with you that same night. The recording ended. Spencer stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. You witch, he hissed. You spied on me. I ignored him. I looked at my sister. He was never going to save the house, Dominique. He was waiting for me to sign over the $40 million so he could take his cut and leave you homeless. He has tickets to Italy booked for tomorrow night. One way. For him and Jessica. Dominique stood up. The chair fell backward with a crash. She did not look at me. She looked at the man she had spent 5 years pretending to have a perfect life with. The man she had defended when I accused him of losing the house. You liar, she screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of total humiliation. She grabbed the photos and threw them at his face. The glossy paper fluttered down around him like confetti. You told me you loved me. You told me we were a power couple. You got her pregnant. You got your secretary pregnant. Spencer held up his hands, backing away. Dom, listen to me. It is not what it looks like. Julia is manipulating this. She faked the photos. It is AI. Don't you dare lie to me, Dominique shrieked. She lunged across the table. Her manicured nails, usually so perfect, became weapons. She clawed at his face, grabbing his expensive suit jacket. She was screaming incoherently now, sobbing and striking him. "You ruined everything. You lost my house. You cheated on me. I hate you." Spencer tried to push her away, but she was fueled by the rage of a woman scorned in front of an audience. She grabbed his hair, pulling hard. The waiters rushed forward, but I held up a hand, stopping them. "Let them finish," I said. "Get off me, you crazy cow," Spencer yelled, losing his composure completely. He shoved her hard. It was a violent push. Dominique stumbled backward in her high heels. She flailed her arms, trying to find balance, but her feet slipped on the spilled water. She fell hard onto the floor, landing flat on her stomach. A collective gasp went through the restaurant. Several diners stood up, horrified. A pregnant woman falling on her stomach is a nightmare scenario. My father screamed, Dominique trying to get up to help her. But then something strange happened. Dominique did not cry out in pain for her baby. She did not clutch her stomach in agony. As she tried to push herself up, the tight silk of her dress shifted. The violent fall and the shove had snapped the delicate straps of the undergarment she was wearing. There was a soft popping sound, and then right there on the floor of the most expensive restaurant in Chicago, the miracle baby fell out. It was not a baby. It was a high-quality silicone prosthetic bump. It slid out from under her dress and rolled across the carpet, coming to a stop near my feet. Dominique froze. She looked at the silicone belly, then looked up at the room. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not tense, it was shocked. It was the silence of a magic trick gone horribly wrong. Spencer looked down at her, and for the first time that night he laughed. It was a cruel, barking laugh. "Oh, stop with the act, Dom," he sneered, wiping a scratch on his cheek. "You can stop pretending to be the victim now. Look, everyone. Look at the grieving mother." He kicked the silicone belly. It wobbled absurdly. "She has been wearing that thing for 3 months," he shouted to the shocked diners. "She had her tubes tied years ago because she didn't want stretch marks. She faked the whole thing to get more followers and to guilt-trip her family into giving her money." He looked at me, his eyes wild. "You want the truth, Julia? Here is the truth. There is no baby, there never was. She is just as much of a fraud as the rest of us." Dominique curled into a ball on the floor, hiding her face in her hands, sobbing hysterically, her secret shame exposed to the world. The influencer who curated every aspect of her life was now lying on the floor with her fake pregnancy rolling away from her. I looked down at them. The cheater and the liar. The power couple who had sneered at my life for years. They were not powerful, they were pathetic. I picked up my purse and walked over to where Spencer was standing. "You are right, Spencer," I said calmly. "You are family. You deserve each other." I turned to the head waiter who was looking at the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Please add the cost of the broken glass and the cleaning bill to my tab, and call security. I think these trespassers are done with their meal." I walked past my sobbing sister and my stunned father. I did not look back. I had torn down the walls of their lives brick by brick. The mother was a criminal, the father was a bankrupt failure, the husband was an adulterer, and the golden child was a fraud. My work here was done. The heavy wooden doors of the private dining room swung shut, cutting off the wails of my mother as the police officers escorted her toward the elevator. The sound of handcuffs clicking was still echoing in my ears, but inside the room the chaos was taking a different form. Spencer Vance, the man who had orchestrated the financial ruin of my family, looked at the closing doors and then at me. His face was a mask of pure panic. The arrogance that had defined him for years had evaporated, leaving behind the terrified face of a con artist whose time had run out. He looked at Dominique, who was still curled on the floor, sobbing next to her silicone stomach. He did not move to help her. He did not offer a hand or a comforting word. Instead, he grabbed his suit jacket from the back of the chair. "I have to go," he stammered, backing away toward the emergency exit. "I need to call my lawyer. This is a misunderstanding. I will fix this." "Spencer!" "Wait!" Dominique screamed, reaching out a hand toward him. "Do not leave me. You said we were a team." Spencer looked at her with disgust. "There is no team, Dom. It is over. Deal with your own mess." He turned and ran. He literally ran, knocking over a chair in his haste to escape before the police returned or before I decided to press charges against him too. The heavy fire exit door slammed behind him, leaving a vibration that rattled the crystal glasses on the table. And then there were three. My father Bernard sat slumped in his chair. He looked small. The man who had terrorized my childhood with his booming voice and strict rules was gone. In his place was an old, broken man, staring at a plate of cold Wagyu beef. Dominique pulled herself up from the floor, wiping mascara from her cheeks. She looked at the empty chair where her husband had been, and the realization of her total abandonment washed over her. I stood at the head of the table. I felt incredibly tired. My adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a deep, aching hollow in my chest. I looked at the lawyer, Marcus Thorne. He was quietly packing his briefcase. He was a smart man. He knew when a case was unwinnable. "Mr. Thorne," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "before you leave, I think you have some paperwork for my family to sign." Thorne paused. He looked at my father, then at me. "Ms. Bennett, given the circumstances and the arrest of your mother, I believe my representation is no longer effective." "I am not asking you to represent them," I said. "I am asking you to facilitate a surrender." I reached into my purse and pulled out the settlement agreement they had tried to force me to sign. I flipped it over to the blank side. I placed it in front of my father. "Here is the new deal, Dad." My father looked up, his eyes red and watery. "Julia, please." "Listen to me," I said, cutting him off. "You have two choices. Choice A is that I walk out of here right now. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I will instruct the sheriff to execute the eviction order. You and Dominique will be homeless. I will also proceed with the civil lawsuit for the $13,000 Mom stole, and I will testify against her at the sentencing hearing, ensuring she gets the maximum prison time." Dominique sobbed loudly, burying her face in her hands. "Or," I continued, "Choice B. You withdraw your lawsuit against me immediately with prejudice, meaning you can never file it again. You sign a document admitting that the lottery ticket is my sole property, and you will post a public apology video on social media admitting that the pregnancy was fake and the accusations against me were lies. And if we do that," my father whispered, hope flickering in his eyes, "if you do that, I will not testify against Mom. I will ask the district attorney for leniency, and I will not throw you on the street. I will find you a place to live. It will not be the mansion, but it will be a roof over your heads." My father looked at the paper. He looked at Dominique. He looked at the luxury restaurant around him, the symbol of the life he was losing forever. He picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold it. He signed his name. Then he pushed the paper toward Dominique. "Sign it, Dom," he said, his voice cracking. "Spencer is gone. We have no one left." Dominique took the pen. She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and fear. But she signed. She signed away her claim to my fortune. She signed away her pride. Marcus Thorne took the paper, notarized it with his stamp, and handed it to me. "Ms. Bennett, it has been a pleasure," he said with a professional nod. Then he walked out, leaving his clients behind without a backward glance. I took the paper. It was just a piece of paper, but it weighed 1,000 pounds. It was the document of my freedom. I looked at my father and sister one last time. I wanted to feel happy. I wanted to feel triumphant. I had won. I had the money. I had the house. I had the truth. But as I looked at their broken faces, I did not feel joy. I just felt empty. I realized that I had spent my whole life trying to win the love of people who were incapable of loving anyone but themselves. And now that I had stripped away their power, there was nothing left underneath. No hidden affection, no secret pride, just greed and fear. I signaled the waiter. "Check, please." The waiter brought the leather folder. The bill was $4,200. I took out my own credit card, the one they had not stolen. I paid the bill. I added a generous tip for the staff who had to witness this train wreck. I stood up and put on my coat. Where are you going? My father asked, panic rising in his voice again. Julia, what about us? How do we get home? The police towed your mother car. Spencer took the keys to the Range Rover. I stopped at the door. I looked back at them sitting amidst the ruins of the most expensive dinner of their lives. You can take an Uber, Dad. I hear they are quite affordable. But Julia, my father called out. You said you would help us. I will, I said. Call me tomorrow. I will send you the address of your new apartment. But tonight, you are on your own. I walked out of the restaurant. The elevator ride down was fast. When the doors opened to the lobby, the cold Chicago air rushed in to meet me. It felt clean. It felt sharp. I walked to my car, my heels clicking on the pavement. I did not look up at the skyscraper. I did not look back at the past. I got into my car and drove away into the night, leaving the ghosts of my family behind me in the glass tower. 2 months later, the snow had finally melted, revealing the first patches of green grass in Chicago. The city was waking up from winter, and so was I. I stood on the sidewalk in front of the house at number 42, my childhood home. The brick colonial looked exactly the same as it had the night I watched the foreclosure sign rustle in the wind, but it felt different now. It was silent. The Mercedes was gone. The Range Rover was gone. The windows were dark. My mother Estelle was currently living in a halfway house, serving the first month of her 5-year probation sentence. Her lawyer had managed to get her a plea deal, thanks to my letter requesting leniency. She avoided prison, but she was a convicted felon wearing an ankle monitor. She had been expelled from the country club. Her friends had abandoned her. She spent her days working at a community center sorting donations, complaining to anyone who would listen about how her daughter had betrayed her. Spencer Vance was still missing. The FBI had issued a warrant for his arrest for wire fraud and investment scams. Rumor had it he was in Mexico, but without money or connections, it was only a matter of time before he was caught. Jessica, his mistress, had given an interview to a tabloid claiming he had stolen her jewelry before he ran. It seemed a leopard truly never changes its spots. As for my father and Dominique, I kept my word. I rented a 2-bedroom apartment for them in a working-class neighborhood on the south side. It was clean, it was safe, but it was small. I paid the rent directly to the landlord. I gave them a monthly allowance for food and utilities, but not a penny more. My father had to take a job as a greeter at a hardware store to pay for his cigarettes. Dominique was forced to get a job as a receptionist at a dental office. She had deleted her social media accounts after the apology video went viral, exposing her fake pregnancy. She was no longer an influencer. She was just a girl working 9 to 5 trying to make ends meet. I visited them once to give them the keys. The apartment smelled of cheap cleaning products. My father would not look at me. Dominique cried in her room. I did not stay for tea. Now I stood in front of the mansion that had started it all. I owned it free and clear. I had paid off the mortgage with a single wire transfer from my trust fund. A large yellow truck pulled up to the curb. The engine rumbled loudly. A man in a hard hat jumped out holding a clipboard. Ms. Bennett, he asked. Yes, that is me, I said. We are ready to start. Do you want to do a final walkthrough before we begin? I looked at the house. I thought about walking through the halls one last time. I thought about seeing my old bedroom, the kitchen where I washed dishes, while they laughed, the dining room where I was treated like a stranger. No, I said. There is nothing in there I want to save. The man nodded. He signaled to the driver of the excavator. The massive machine roared to life, its metal arm rising into the air like a dinosaur. I watched as the metal bucket crashed into the front porch. The sound of wood splintering was loud and satisfying. The white pillars collapsed. The brick facade crumbled. I was not selling the house. I was not going to let another family inherit the bad energy that lived within those walls. I had petitioned the city and used my influence as a landscape architect to rezone the lot. I was demolishing the house to build a pocket park. It would be a public space with a playground for children, benches for reading, and a community garden. I had designed it myself. It would be a place of joy, a place where everyone was welcome, a place where no one would ever be turned away or made to feel small. I watched the roof cave in. Dust rose into the air, swirling in the spring breeze. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. Interest payment received. Monthly income, $400,000. I smiled. I turned away from the demolition and walked toward my car. It was a new Land Rover, solid and reliable with plenty of room for my drafting equipment. I had $100 million in the bank. I had a new apartment in the city with a view of the river. I had my own architecture firm, now free to build the projects I dreamed of. But as I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine, I realized that the money was not the best thing I had won that Thanksgiving. The money bought me comfort, it bought me security, but the true gift was the clarity. The lottery ticket had acted like a blacklight, revealing the stains and cracks that had always been there, hidden in the dark. It forced me to see my family for who they really were, and it gave me the courage to finally walk away. I put the car in drive. I did not look in the rearview mirror as the walls of my childhood prison finally came crashing down behind me. I drove toward the horizon where the sun was just starting to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. I was alone, but for the first time in 32 years, I was not lonely. I was free. And that, I realized as I merged onto the highway, was the only jackpot that really mattered. This journey taught me that real wealth isn't about the numbers in a bank account. It is about the freedom to walk away from people who drain your spirit, even if they share your DNA. For years, I thought I was worthless because my family treated me like an option. But the moment I stopped seeking their validation, I found my power. Tearing down that house wasn't just an act of revenge, it was an act of liberation. We cannot choose where we come from, but we can always choose where we go next. Peace is the only luxury worth fighting for. Have you ever had to cut ties with a toxic family member to save your own peace? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If Julia's strength inspired you today, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice and resilience.